He's been to the...
And as promised, here we are with Jason Spiess for our weekly discussion and oil field review, amongst other things. And how are you doing today, Jason?
Not too bad. How are you doing on this lovely... Is it a Friday today? Do we have Friday going on? My kid's off school today, so my week is just totally thrown in caboodle land.
Yeah, it is Friday. That's what they tell me anyway.
Okay, yeah, because you know how it goes, and we're at the time of the year where the days of the week dictate what day we think it is. You know, we don't get that nice summer break, but anyway, so yeah, a great week this week at the Crude Life. We had some outstanding interviews, some down in the Cheyenne-Lusk area, which is real close to your radio stations, and with William Insulation Company, talking about how that supply chain in the oil and gas market has really been growing over the past few years. Plus the Powder River Basin, boy, I tell you, it seems everybody I talk to in the Wyoming, Denver, is really getting a lot of good business out in the Powder River Basin. They're either setting up for it or they're actually getting the business out there. And it's a whole different level of energy in their voice. It's a whole different sound of inspiration in their voice than when they talk about other plays. And I don't know if that makes sense to you or not, but sometimes, you can just detect when somebody is just really being a little bit more authentic because they're experiencing it versus hopeful optimism.
Right, yeah.
So
you can tell.
Yeah, and so for me, I pay attention to those types of things. That's one of the things that makes me a professional. That's one of the reasons why I am considered a professional interviewer and have won awards in both the newspaper and the radio industry. Did you know that? I'm a 2-time Marconi Award winner in the radio industry.
I did not know that. That's pretty far out. That's awesome.
Well, thank you very much. I'm part of a team that was where we won two out of the 3 years I was executive producer at the radio station. So sorry, I just... Little walk down memory lane today for myself. One of the things that, I have an interesting non-energy discussion if you'd like to hear that. Because I know we like to talk energy, but every now and then we like to sidebar into some other areas. So
I'm intrigued.
Okay.
What is the sidebar?
So are you familiar with sports?
Kind of.
Sports, so important you got to say it 3 times?
Sure.
Okay. Dale Brown is a NCAA coaching legend. He's been to the Final Four a number of times. He coached Shaquille O'Neal in college. He went to Louisiana State University where he coached. And so just kind of one of those 30 years at the same place coaches and always was in the tournament and that sort of thing. Anyway, we aired his interview from a few years ago I did with him this week, and it just reminded me of how different our cultures have changed over the past 30 years. And I think your listeners will probably know the name John Wooden. Do you know the name John Wooden?
I recognize it.
Oh, that's good to hear. John Wooden was a legendary coach at UCLA, and he was a basketball coach, probably considered the greatest basketball coach in college history. And yeah, I mean, just created a terrific program that just dominated college sports college basketball for years, like years and years. And one of the things that's changed in today's society versus back then is that Dale Brown and I talk about, for example, would John Wooden even have made it in today's world? Because it took him 10 years to get that system built, that triangle offense or whatever. I can't remember the name of it, but that offense that he built or that system that he built, it took him 10 years. And after he was able to build it, he went on to be, 20 years of just dominance. So he said, oh, absolutely not. He'd been fired year 3. No way, man. If you ain't got the instant gratification and the instant result, you're gone. And it was interesting to hear, one of the coaching legends just to flat out say that. So that was an interesting, and that of course is available on our websites and that sort of thing. And I'm sure we've got it airing on our programs and everything. But that's the difference between back then and now. Is back then they actually took the time to build things and create systems. And
there was value placed in it. There was value placed on taking time to get things done right and making sure that it happened exactly the right way. And there's less value placed on that now. Now there's more value placed on having things been made easier for us.
Well, and you said the word right twice. And, when I hear that, I think that, boy, that's a really ambiguous term. That's really open to context. And in your example, though, of doing things the right way, back when you had the time to do things the right way was oftentimes shaped and molded as you went. And that was the beauty of it, because then it was the right way. Nowadays, the right way is just barking orders at some imaginary goal line that I don't even know if it exists anymore. People are just trained to bark orders.
But you are correct, and that's basically what I meant, I guess, when I said the right way, because to each person, that the right way is different. Every person, we have our own abilities and strengths and weaknesses to draw off onto, and we're kind of in this instant gratification society. It's like we want to be cookie cutters, and we can't do that. People are not the same.
No.
So it's supposed to take time. So.
Yeah, and there's really a push towards that. And getting back to energy, some of the other conversations that we've had this week, in fact, I believe it's airing this weekend, Tom Shepstone, him and I have a great conversation on this, is consensus science. So that's another direction that we've moved in the last 10 years that's really scary. People should be very awake of this concept that has happened in our society and just government and everything else, to where, when did consensus science overrule science? Because just because 1,000 scientists agree that climate change is happening doesn't mean it is, when there's one scientist that can prove all the other ones wrong. Just because 100 people say one thing that is inaccurate and one person says one thing that is accurate doesn't mean the one person's wrong. Science used to be like that. Science used to actually take emotion and politics and prejudice and all this stuff out of it. Science used to be black and white. But now we've entered into an age of consensus science, to where, hey, if enough people can agree with this briefing of a scientific report, that passes as new science. Go ahead. I heard you trying to chime in there. I was on my soapbox, girl.
Oh, no, I was agreeing with you. No, I was actually absolutely agreeing with you. Science is supposed to be unbiased. The beauty of science and math is that they have hard lines and they are universal. It's supposed to be something that, regardless of what language you speak or where you live at, it still makes sense. The same chemicals are going to do the same thing in Brazil as they would if you conducted that experiment here. And there's, formulas and a way to write it down. It's supposed to be unbiased fact, and anything that has not been proven fact is simply a theory. And it's supposed to be a theory until it's then been proven a fact. But you're right, it's come to like a consensus ruling. Well, I don't really believe that, so it's not true. But that doesn't, just because you and all your friends say that this is how it is, doesn't actually make it true.
And
so you're right.
I'm very, very passionate about this misrepresentation of the environment and the misrepresentation of climate change, to where I just don't think it's as big as a deal as everyone else. I think humans have been decarbonizing for the last 150 years. I think there's been a natural progression of becoming cleaner and more environmentally sound. I think that the average person recycles probably more than they don't in some way, shape, or form, whether it's through their trash or whether it's using disposable razors for, a week longer than they should, whatever it is. There's, whether it's because of pocketbook reasons or because of ideological reasons. I just don't think this crash course is healthy. I heard the other day that some of the leading candidates are literally saying we have 12 years left. We have 12 years left to solve this problem, or we're done. That is like beyond the 2012 doomsdayer. That's beyond the Y2K hysteria, in my opinion. And the fact that any media outlet is actually enabling that type of rhetoric, that, oh my word, that's like worse than shouting fire. Well, that's worse than shouting fire in a theater. I mean, seriously, telling people we have 12 years left or this planet is doomed, so we all better adhere to this multi-trillion-dollar policy that gives away all of our rights, that's crazy. That is literally crazy talk. And I'm just astounded that that type of rhetoric has found its way into the mainstream and public dialogue. That's just very confusing to me, and I have not been able to figure out a satisfactory answer yet, or anything that gratifies that uneasy feeling I have. Anyway, so there's my little soapbox for you here. I mean, I know you love getting me on this soapbox. I don't know how you do it, but you're like the only I interview hundreds of people, and very rarely do I get on my soapbox like I do with this show. This is comical.
Well, we like it. I like it, though. I mean, I'm not going to speak for everyone else, but all the feedback that I get is that everybody else likes it too. But
well, it's like I tell people when some people will come up to me and they'll say, "Hey, man, I thought you're non-political and you're non-polarizing and this and that," and I say, "Well, I am during my interviews, yeah, but when I'm not, stuff does bother me. I still get annoyed by certain things. I am a human being, just because I play this non-biased reporter during the day that, might make a few smart aleck comments here and there. Doesn't mean I don't care about things and don't understand. And keep in mind, I want to backtrack for a second if we have a minute. The one thing I'd like people to understand when I'm talking about climate change, when I'm talking about the environment, when I'm talking about the policy, I'm really talking about this attachment that the movement has made to almost make it like a cult or a religion or a spiritual connection. And that's the dangerous part, because it mimics the Garden of Eden. I mean, from a biblical standpoint, what the environmentalists have tried to do is say, hey, listen, man has come in and it has disrupted the Garden of Eden, the earth. And we have original sin, so we must repent. That they've taken the same narrative and story that many religions are founded on, and they've brought that into the environment. And I'm speaking from an anthropological, if I even pronounced that right as I hiccuped halfway through that word, Anthropology 101. You go to any college, university, you have any college professor on, and they'll tell you the same thing. This is from education here, taking a look at that from a training that says the shift that's happened with environmentalism is that of a spiritual nature, and that's where I think we need to be very careful, because yes, you can get have spiritual experiences with nature, but that doesn't mean you should base policy on it, because we're talking science here, and it just boggles my mind that people will say fortune tellers are crazy because they use a crystal ball, but a climate change scientist will say, oh no, that's real important stuff. This computer says this and that, and they have no data to back it up. They haven't even been able to prove that it works for 10 years. How are they going to tell us for 100 years? It's very confusing to me, this whole thing. So that was more than a minute.
And we got to wrap it up, but I would tend to agree. And one last point that I would definitely agree on is spiritual. I mean, it is more of a spiritual nature, and therefore government should not be the one in control of those policies. You're right. That should be something that we take into our own responsibility as individuals who share this planet to do something good by it. It shouldn't have to be dictated to us by the government. It should just be done because it's the right thing.
And I'll tell you, in all honesty, I've covered pretty much every industry for the last 20, 25 years, and I've done government affairs and everything else. And I can honestly say, without a shadow of a doubt, being completely non-biased, the oil and gas industry and the energy industry, but specifically the oil and gas industry, has done more to innovate eco-conservatism than anything I've ever seen before. And I compare it a lot to the way the hunters took control of conservation and wetlands, and just they were the ones that actually really took control and gave it the push that it needed to do the right thing. And I think oil and gas has really become the new leader when it comes to the environmental movement. And I understand the satire and the irony behind that, but honest to God, think that's the truth now. The oil and gas industry is the leader in the environmental movement.
Well, I love talking with you about it.
All right, we'll catch you next week.
Thank you so much. It's been awesome.